welcome to RL AfterShock. Welcome to the 6th episode. We had a bit of a 2-week break in between this and the 5th one, but we're back with even more Rocket League to talk about, even more discussions to be had, a few results that we need to get through, so there's a lot of stuff to talk about in today's show, and once again I want to welcome you very much to, thank you very much for joining us here this evening. I'm Switchblade Jam, your host as usual. Joining me as he always does is Digital Bacon. How you been, buddy? Because like, you know, literally it's been a week off because of various other commitments. Obviously you're a very busy man. I was stuck in Scotland on Monday, you know, was it lonely without us here? Did you get lonely last Monday?
No, I just a lot of sleepless nights, I'm not gonna lie, Jay. And then of course we had the Renegade Cup stuff, not only in EU, NA. I just want to say once again, absolutely smashed out part. Not only, you know, the Rewind lads that we were working with, but of course the Baguettes for running it, absolutely amazing. One thing that definitely struck me was, I know we're sort of giving the numbers away probably a little bit, but 6.1 thousand viewers on average for the Wednesday stream was our highest concurrency. Unfortunately, on the Thursday stream, there was a little bit of a mishap with Twitch and whatnot, meaning that we didn't get front page for like the majority of the stream. But 6.1 thousand viewers on that day put Rocket League on a third-party tournament alongside the Rainbow Six Siege like main channel, which I think is just absolutely nuts considering.
Yeah, that's pretty insane stuff for a community level thing. So, you know, big props to everyone in the Rocket League scene. Obviously, in today's show, we're going to be covering all of the stuff on the Renegade Cup for the EU side of things, the Rocket Baguette Grand Prix. Obviously, we're going to go through round 2 since we missed that last week, and we're mostly going to be focusing on that playoff bracket. So, once again, if you're tuning in live, make sure you follow the Twitch channel and follow us on Twitter at RLAfterShock. Join us in the Discord as well by typing in !Discord in the Twitch chat. If you're listening to the audio version via Spotify, then all of the information is in the show's description. So, before we get into today's tournaments and these past gone weeks tournaments, let's do some news because we had a couple of funny stories come through. In particular, actually I'm just gonna do a little bit of spoiler right now because I'm wearing it. Reason Gaming are back in the Elite Series. Obviously Unilad could never really get the funds together to you know, actually formulate a decent team. While the picks, the draft picks were done for them on their behalf. Those picks are now going to the favor of Reason Gaming. They've picked up a small team, and well, they're back after one season of hiatus, I guess you could say, Bacon.
Yeah, that's it. After, like, it was always a bit of a sour thing. Reason Gaming winning the second season, unfortunately losing their spot, of course, to Unilad. Business-wise, it made sense. It's understandable, but it did feel a bit sour. So then coming back in, first week victory as well for Shakuron Pugze and Calix. I think if they could get the win again, this is just like the best sort of result. Just really sticking it to Gfinity in a really fun and tournament way. You know, it's like, oh, you can kick us out, but we're going to come back with a vengeance. And that's what I'm actually low-key, well, not actually low-key, it's pretty high-key here, back in Reason Gaming this season, purely because I want that storyline to happen, you know?
Oh no, absolutely. Like I'm a big fan of Reason Gaming. Obviously, yeah, I've held back nothing about my involvement with the organization and my personal friendship with its management staff. So to see this come back as well is fantastic. I do have a couple of comments in regards to what Reason have been able of the roster that Reason have put together for Rocket League in particular. Obviously, Shakuron Pugze and Calix is a roster that's not known. It's not like it's a full-blown official roster. They are essentially just a mixed team of players that were thrown together last minute, because this was a last-minute addition to the Elite Series, obviously being announced only a couple days before the Elite Series came up. So they've also got Switch and SJ and Presley as well as the subs. Obviously, Switch and SJ were drafted in through the Challenger Series. Obviously, you know, you talk about that first victory, which we'll get into more detail in later on down the line. There's a sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I just got a message on Discord. I've completely forgot what I was saying. Oh my god. Oh Jesus. It's all gone wrong. 2 weeks, a week long break, and things have already shit the bed. Right, no. Yeah, Reason Gaming, obviously. Great to see them back. We'll talk about their roster and the results a little bit later on in the show, I think, Bacon.
Okay, so we'll leave the roster talk until later on when we actually get to a segment on the first week. Because of course we already had this weekend, the first weekend of play, which, no spoilers, I mean, technically it's hard to spoil something that's already sort of like happened quite a bit ago. So, I mean, this is Rocket League, and everyone at home is sort of like an enthusiast, they should already know. But we'll get on to the second point, which is talking about the next Renegade Cup, Jay. Take that away.
Yep, Renegade Cup has been, or Renegade Cup number 2 for November has been announced. It's the Rocketeers Thunderdome, and there was a lot of speculation about who would be taking that particular, who would be taking the last couple of Renegade Cups. Obviously, Rival and Rewind are up there in sort of like the idea, and who would be taking what. Probably a good chance that Rival will get their shout at Rewind, more than likely, considering their operation in the scene at the moment. But yeah, this is a bit of a surprise coming out. Obviously, Rocketeers, not 100% familiar with their their organization, their tournament organization skills. Obviously, they're mostly known as the magazine site, but they announced how it's going to be kicking off on the 31st of October. I believe the first couple of days are, they're on the way actually, only a couple of days, so we're going to have a lot to talk about in the next episode of AfterShock. As well as that, in the time between that announcement and us doing the show right now, we've also had the first load of talent come through with the Subpar and HD guys, Cole and Stumpy joining the team. We've got Doreen actually from the Veritas lot, Ninja Rider coming in from America, and the Patch is also going to be involved as well. So it's been a long time since we've seen the Patch at top level Rocket League, but a fun little sort of groundwork being laid right now by this organization.
So the Patch has been doing a lot of American stuff. That's what he's been keeping up with for the last couple of months, talking about Nexus, I think, alongside the Astro Beyond stuff. So generally, that's where you can see they've also brought in Ninja Rider. Those two work nicely as a duo, so it's good for them, and definitely good for Ninja Rider to step it up, because he wasn't involved with the rival stuff last month for Project Phoenix. So lovely seeing that lad get a crack at this, and of course, Con Stumpy, a solid little duo themselves, of course, being put in. You can definitely see that Dorian, who is actually running this, is trying to put together the strongest team that he thinks is possible, from little caster duos to set up, which is cool. And like you said, Rocketeers not actually putting on a tournament beforehand themselves. They're just sort of doing this in name. It's actually the Veritas sort of lot which are running it. It's the same organization, essentially runs both. And they've done a German university scene beforehand, so they do have a bit of experience. They put on LAN finals, and they've been doing production. So I think this one's in pretty safe hands, to be honest, Jay.
I'd say it's a bit more of a gamble than being safe, honestly. Obviously, this is a major step up for these guys. Going from essentially what is an unknown league into doing one of what will be the big forefront of the community scene in the next month. Obviously, for Veritas, they got to kind of knock it out of the park. For Sonics, didn't really see much of a choice, to be honest. Unfortunately, they've had a bit of a shortage over the past couple of months of trying to get organizers sorted for this month, and probably also for January as well. Things might get a little bit more awkward if they don't want to use Rival Esports. Hopefully this gamble pays out for them. Obviously, I do want to see Rocketeers do well. Obviously, we'll be talking about how well they'll be doing over the next course of the next couple of podcasts. But as it stands, I'm skeptically optimistic. Bacon. Let's put it that way.
I guess in a way you could say it as a gamble, but like I said, talking to the lads, knowing them, I think this is actually a very safe choice personally. They're a mature lot. Generally your problem with community orgs is that they're kids, essentially. That's not beat around the bush about it. Generally, you've got your teenagers and university students run them. This is an older lot that can put the backing behind it. They know how to run it. They've got the experience. And yeah, I don't really have any worries about this tournament myself personally, knowing the lads run it, and they've got already a good talent lineup. So happy days to just watch it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical on how much we should actually reveal as well, because I have been told some very interesting little factors as to what's going to be happening with that, their production quality. So I'm going to leave that for them to. I don't want to spoil the surprise. I'm just going to leave that for them essentially. So there we go. Renegade Cup announced as part of Rocket League's next big community level tournament. Again, $5,000 up for grabs in the EU region, and $5,000 up for the Nexus one that's going on. Yep, they're kicking off in 2 days. Nexus are running one over in the North American region, but that's not our concern because we are EU. Very easy sort of news week, and a very simple sort of news stories that we just quickly wanted to gloss over, because the main feature of today is actually going to be one that we've got a lot to talk about on. So I think we should probably just dive right in and just explain some context real quick. So this made front page of the subreddit
mid last week?
about mid last week or so. about Thursday, Wednesday or so. So you know, it was roughly within that sort of like prime region of where it will get upvotes. It's a little piece on a website called harib.com, which I'm assuming is this guy's personal website blog essentially. I haven't read through much else of everything else of all his other blog posts, but essentially it's essentially just a blog of sorts essentially. And essentially he's posted this this little study theoretical piece, I'm not sure what you can call it, which is called "Are Rocket League's Viewership Numbers Fraudulently High?" And throughout the course of this article, essentially he goes through a lot of the points about, you know, low viewership plus a little bit of an abnormality in viewership numbers, like quoting sources and graphs and shit. And I do want to kind of talk us through and break things down bit by bit. But before I do that, because this is going to be quite long-winded on my part, I've got a lot to say about this one. Bacon, I'm going to let you take center stage for the moment.
So this whole article is very much, I don't want to say speculative, but talking with the guys that actually run it, there is a lot of different reasons why it's happened. From a viewer's perspective, I'm like trying to say, if you're like a casual sort of viewer, how you would look at this, the meta at the moment for Rocket League hasn't really changed upon last season. So in a lot of sense, that skill ceiling hasn't really gone up massively. What we're seeing actually instead is that the lower end of the professional scene, so RLRS, is actually climbing up to RLCS, to the point which now, you know, that whole argument of league play should be bigger is pretty much justified, and most of us think that 12 teams in RLCS is a strong shout, because of looking at the top 4 from RS could quite easily fit in and make it exciting. But that's a different point. The point being that viewership numbers for RLCS had dropped off this season purely because it's not as exciting. There's nothing new about Rocket League at the moment. It feels it's very much the same meta, that very defensive playstyle, or a very just full-on attacking playstyle, that it can just feel a little bit, I would say, stale maybe. And that's what I think can be the largest sort of like pull for these numbers, you know, where you're also feeling like, with knowing that Dignitas is going to come out on top, essentially because they've been the strongest team for way too long, that you're just there like already expecting the results, so maybe just tune into the VODs. You're not really worried about watching it live.
Fair enough. I mean, I understand the sort of idea of viewer apathy, and that was one of the points I had down for my particular analysis of this. Certainly, this was one hell of a formulated response. Are you just like talking about only specifically about that side of things? Because I know in the second half of it, it did also poke a little bit of accusation at Psyonix for potentially view botting. This is something I also want to get your thoughts on very, very quickly.
So from what I heard, there was some sort of problem as well with front page of Twitch or something like that. So, like, as in, you know, naturally they're meant to have front page on that day. And so looking at that instant jump, you would imagine, oh, that's when Twitch went around to fix it, and that's when they got front page of Twitch. To go, because naturally to go and climb up by, I do believe the picture shows something like an extra 10,000 views or something like that. 15, to climb 000. That 15,000, Twitch front page does have that power to it. I'm just like saying the difference between, we know it from Rewind, the difference between front page on the Wednesday, on the quarterfinals, and front page not being there really on the Thursday was us losing 2/3 of our viewership. That's
pretty much, you know, like with the Psyonix host, it was about 1,000, 1,500, and then when we got the Twitch front page, it jumped to like 5, 6, and I think at peak hit like 7,100 or so. So, and that's only front page on EU as well. This is like Twitch World, which is what the RLCS gets put up on. So, I find it quite funny how this guy didn't really think about the idea that maybe Twitch had fucked up again on the front page thing. But that's only 1 out of 9 pretty big holes I was able to poke into this particular case. So shall we start from the beginning?
Go on, Jay. Take it away.
Let's start from the beginning. Right, so he addresses a bunch of different things, gives a bit of background about the current state of about the sort of like the numbers essentially behind Rocket League's viewership, and talks a lot about how essentially the numbers for this latest season have been lower than most of the average of season 4 and season 5, which actually it is pretty close to the truth, with the exception of the anomalies in the graph itself, which he explains, of course, in his piece. The problem that he seems to come up with the regional abnormalities is that he doesn't really have any clue as to why that would be the case, why there would be such a low amount of viewership, of course, across the entire format, across the entire season, and particularly for this broadcast, which again, you brought to the idea of viewer apathy.
I was going to say one thing as well. The apathy links in quite nicely to, I remember the RLRS play-ins got nuts good viewership, like the best it's ever been. And again, that was coming up
because it's new and interesting.
It's new and interesting. These were teams where we had, I know for EU, about 8 teams that had a good shot over 4 spaces. You know, you could even include another 8 that would just, you know, if they're playing nuts on the day, could fit in with it. So it was always the enthusiasts finally sticking in. And you got to think, Rocket League is a big game. We've now got over 50 million install base. I wouldn't be able to say how many people that is in EU alone. And then you just got to think the enthusiasts which see it live and think, oh, I want to tune in because they'll keep up with the Gfinities, they'll keep up with RLRS, they'll keep up with all the little community scene. And it was built up, this RLRS planes, to be nuts. And personally, I think myself anyway, RLRS this season was more interesting than RLCS, because that sort of, the level there was so much just more interesting to watch as a spectator. So the RLRS planes really showed up to it, and it's good to see.
Yeah, and as well as that, he kind of like mentioned how the bulk of the viewer base for Rocket League esports is hardcore fans. He talks about how like the first little bit of rising of before the first game is obviously where people like us are going to tune in because we're going to watch the thing anyway. But here's where that sort of argument can be used to explain a part of why Rocket League is also it has lower view numbers, because with the viewer apathy thing combined with recent drama in regards to the Asian scene and in regards to stuff like in-game items, which Psyonix have still been remarkably quiet upon, the frustrations of all of us here are kind of getting to a bit of a breaking point overall. And he doesn't seem to have this concept as to how the audience would react in a way that we have done. Obviously, we've very, very vehemently broadcasted essentially our opinions on things like the in-game items drama, and for us it is frustrating. For other people it will be frustrating to the point where maybe they might give up on Rocket League esports, and this past season as well kind of is the product of that breaking point. But a second thing I also found as well,
I just want to quickly jump in, Jay, just on that point. I'm low-key expecting in-game items for these teams to be announced at LAN. We didn't get a big announcement at LAN last season. Before that, there was always a big one, whether it be a new update or an anniversary, whatever. I'm expecting them to have been quite quiet about this because they want a big release at LAN, and it makes sense. The biggest event, you put out all the items there, and it's more meant there to be the shock value of it. If they don't do it this LAN, I reckon that's a big missed opportunity.
Yeah, but yeah, back to the piece itself. He tries to theorize why there would be low viewership, and essentially in his opening line for saying potential of causes of low viewership, he says, quote, "I was unable to uncover any evidence of technical difficulties." Now, Twitch fucking up might be a technical difficulty of a certain extent. We don't know. I don't know the issues. I haven't looked too deeply into that. But the second possibility he noticed was something external drawing viewers away. But he doesn't really follow up on this with any particular depth. He talks about Black Ops 4, which obviously was a major big release date, and obviously a lot of people were focusing on it, but he also talks about how nothing really, how it didn't affect NA in the same way that it affected EU. So he just basically gave up right there, just like, well, you're not going to do any further investigation by any stretch of the imagination? He certainly didn't, so I did. And I cross-referenced the date of the EU playoffs, October 14th, with other dates in esports, because I tend to find that obviously if your core audience is hardcore fans also tend to be interested in other esports. Certainly my interactions in Rocket League have proven the same with fans from League of Legends, PUBG. Obviously I come from CSGO myself, so I cross-referenced with other tournaments, and what I found was 4 tournaments going on at the exact same day. The first was the first day of Dota 2, of World Showdown of Esports opening day for Dota 2 is one of them. The second one was the PGL Fall Invitational final day for PUBG, which is a grand final as well. More people are going to be interested in that. That was a massive one. CSGO had Star Series and I-League's grand finals on that day, which is a $300,000 LAN event. And then finally, the most damning thing as well, because I know that there are a lot of League of Legends fans that are also interested in Rocket League, Worlds was going on that week. And on that day as well in particular, they had the Group B matches. We had like Cloud9 and Genji Gold and everything. They had a lot of pretty big names on the space. So the idea that that particular date in particular had no reason to have no viewership is actually can be a little bit misconstrued, because his evidence is pretty circumstantial and my evidence is also circumstantial as well. But if that's the level of quality we're going off of, then I'm happy to present this as my point. The third point he makes...
I'm just going to quickly agree with you there. Even if, say, you know someone that you're saying enthusiasts about there, you get quite often, like myself personally, enthusiasts about Rocket League, but when it comes over to Counter-Strike, I'll tune in for those bigger events. Generally, it can be said the other way around, where you've got someone that's a Counter-Strike enthusiast that'll be tuning in for Rocket League because there's nothing on, but as soon as there's a big Counter-Strike event, you don't give a damn about Rocket League. That's not what you're caring about. So that is pretty much, for me, a big pull as well.
Well, the third point he goes on to make as well is about storylines going into the playoffs. And one of the things he focuses on, which I have no idea why he fucking focused on this, was the point about Scrub Killer and Vitality. And it's like, yeah, he was hyped in week 1. Ever since then, we've all been pretty much ranking on the guy. Like, I don't think anyone was looking at this like Vitality are going to do amazing things. It's like, that is the most subjective point in the entire in the entire piece. It's like, I don't know why you reference that as part of your as part of your, like, I don't understand. Yeah, as part of your argument, essentially. Like, I don't get why you put that there, but
a single player doesn't cause that.
Exactly. A single player does not affect the entire outcome of a broadcast, but, you know, that's just one of 9 points again. The fourth one is just general, just to talk about the evidence itself. It's circumstantial at best. He's created very weird arguments, and he's brought to this one little anomaly, a blip on the radar, essentially, for the entire season. He's done very, very little to explain anything. He's done very little to try and reason at any way, shape, or form. And he also forgets one of the most basic things you get taught about when you're doing like GCSE maths about like graphs and gathering data, is that correlation does not equal causation. And especially this is going to come into effect later on down the line when we talk about the view botting thing. Just one result as well is not even a correlation. So where he gets these ideas from is just essentially just pulling it out of his arse, essentially. I'm going to say it straight. I think he's pulling out of his ass. I've made it abundantly clear that everyone's in the firing line on this show, so fuck it.
Well, it's the reason why pretty much we don't want to damn him, because I think this is someone just stating their opinion. So we're not actually going out and saying dude's name, not saying his Reddit name, whatever like that. If you want to, you can go find it, of course, but that's you going out your own way to continue that on. It's just
we don't encourage any harassment. We should probably add that as a little bit on the side.
It's just for me to put this onto Reddit and make it look almost like, because this looked very official when you look at the graph.
It looked very official,
very nicely presented. So props to the guy about that. But again, the writing itself, and like I said, the evidence is pretty much it's very weak. This is something you had expected, like you said, GCSE sort of kid to write out. A very clever one, don't get me wrong, but it's like that 16-year-old trying to get a bit of fire going on, essentially, which we don't want drama going on when it's not needed and it's not even justified here, really.
Yeah, like, you know, I've had no shortage of excuses to ramp on Psyonix over the past few weeks. If you've been listening to the podcast, you'll fucking know. This is certainly not one of these things, though. Like, especially when you go into our next point about the 15,000 view bots. He presents 3 hypotheses as to why this 15,000 jump at the end of the EU playoffs may have happened. It's fucking great. The first one is there is a legitimate, as yet undiscovered reason for the overall low viewership, and they got a big hose of around 15,000 near the end. Probably the most plausible hypothesis. The second, Psyonix's view botting around 15,000 fakes and forgot to turn them on until the last match of the day.
Forgot, like that. There's a button in the Psyonix.
Oh, no, it gets better. It gets better. It gets better. It gets better. The third one is Psyonix's view botting around 15,000 fakes, forgot to turn them on that day, and coincidentally got a big host of around 15,000 viewers. Like, what the fuck does that have anything to do with anything? Like, what?
15,000 viewers? Is that just something like Forsen suddenly they're like, oh, RLCS is on, I've finished my stream, I'll host it? They generally don't do that, big streamers. That's not a thing that really happens with tournament stuff. So
like, I was reading that part and I was like, what does this have to contribute to anything? Like, it's not even like the evidence itself supports this idea. Like, he's been going on and on about how Psyonix is like viewbotting the stream, and then he adds that in. It's like, is that supposed to make you sound more legitimate than the idea you're giving another third theory a bit of like airtime? Like, he never brings this up again. Like, he constantly talks about like view hosting and view bots throughout the entire thing, and then he goes on to talk about lack of communication from Psyonix, which is like, why this is even an argument point, I still don't know, because that's just the norm in
yeah,
Rocket League.
Everyone's accepted this now.
Yeah, like even when people were saying back with the in-game items thing, oh, this is gonna kill the scene. Sonic still didn't respond to that, right? That's what I was saying. Remember, I had that impassioned speech where I went off on one and I absolutely shit on everybody from the organization, and I was like, yo, this is actually something that really worries me. Still no response to that. Still no response to anybody else's stuff. So why they'd respond to an increase in viewers like that may or may not end up being, you know, anything in the grand scale of things is beyond me. But hey, stick it in the report if you want to. Yeah. He goes on to say as well, a quote, hypothetically, if Psyonix knows the viewers are from a host, would they be willing to tell the world about it? He talks about, like, you know, why they want a view bot, and why or you know, trying to talk about if it was just happening to be just a freak host, and like Ninja or someone hosted them to try and drive viewers to the stream, then why wouldn't they acknowledge it? And the thing he fails to understand is that stuff like, you know, Twitch alerts and things like that, and like, you know, social media shout outs, they don't have a single place in professional esports broadcasting. And to come out and do that in the middle of a host, like, shout out to Dr. Disrespect for hosting our stream, by the way. Massive shout outs to him. Oh, this is a great sick passing play. Oh, scrub killer score. Like that, you never fucking see that. It don't happen because it's not. It has no place in esports. It's common industry practice. Not any like broadcaster I know that isn't at a community level doesn't do this. ESL don't do this. Starladder don't do this. Fucking not even eFrag did that when I worked for them. Those counts. You know, like these guys. Like, you know, no organization does this at all. But he still says, but I would do it. It's like, what you would do has no bearing on this, though. It doesn't matter. No. You're not them. Psyonix want to maintain a professional profile, and that's exactly what they've done. Even if they were to come out and say, oh, about that 15,000 jump at the end of the last match, you know, it was a host, guys. I want to give a massive shout out to this guy, obviously, who hosted us, some random streamer or something, or maybe like, you know, I don't know, Johnny Boy got 15,000 followers, 15,000 viewers. Like, oh, thanks, Johnny Boy, for giving us a host.
They wouldn't do it on the stream. That's essentially.
That's the thing, though. But with Psyonix's silence, if they put a tweet like that out, wouldn't that just arouse suspicion anyway? It's completely non-characteristic from Psyonix to do anything of that kind of sort, you know.
And agreed, like a 15,000 viewer host, you would realize that from maybe another stream coming across, because you can quite often see what's happening and it's normally talked about, because 15,000 viewers is a big host. That's a big streamer that's, say, trying to promote Rocket League. And that's the thing which I was getting at, doesn't happen, because generally if you're a 15,000 viewer streamer, you go and host someone that you're close with. You know, it's all networking essentially. Like we were saying, Ninja earlier would host, I don't know, another Fortnite streamer. That's just pretty much it. Shroud maybe, or whatever his demographic, because it's all managed. You don't get hosts from community stream. I say community streamers, but individuals like Ninja hosting these tournaments, because it's a different demographic. It doesn't link up in the same way. Exactly, and you know, I think the point has been proven right there as to the whole like view botting thing. Like, it's just, it just doesn't make sense for Psyonix in any way to try and acknowledge anything like that. It's just views on a page, essentially. Let's just say, if there was a view bot, not by Psyonix, because I don't think they would do, because that's dumb. Oh no, they have absolutely no fucking reason to. But let's just say some rich Arabian prince decided, let's go give 15,000 views over to Rocket League. What do they get to gain from that? Like, that is literally, if it is a view bot, that is my logical only answer, is that it's some rich person that's just gone, let's just buy 15,000 views for Rocket League. That makes no sense at all. So It's just weird.
Yeah, it is weird, but he still tries and explains a reason as to why Psyonix would do this, and that's where I'm going to end my little piece here by talking about that, because oh my god, it's completely ass backwards. He says, quote, "The clearest explanation for not commenting on anything is fraud, which invites the question of whether or not viewbotting would make any sense. As a morale matter, I have absolutely no idea if relevant people working there are the type that would do such a thing. As a business matter, it's plausible. Before this season, viewership trends started out okay and then took a straight line path to a dumpster fire, which is just like, holy shit, what savageness of you suddenly entered to have this professional figure, and just to add that little line there. All tournament pairs below are roughly equivalent across seasons. Broadcasts were about the same length, and fan rewards were active for all reference broadcasts. This is what Psyonix were looking at for average viewers as numbers rolled in this year." And then he quotes like a bunch of different numbers from like different RLCS seasons, like season 5 had plus 15%, promotion relegation tournament for season 5 had plus 9%, the World Championships for season 5 had negative 5% from season 4 and negative 14% from season 3. I don't know how you get to those numbers, because I'm pretty sure they were about the same for season 4 and 5. And then he starts talking about Universal Open and Gnarly. I'm like, hold on. Why are you bringing that up? Like, there's this one big factor that you've completely ignored in these numbers, and that is the fact that, you know, Gnarly and Universal Open are completely different tournaments, and they might be sponsored by Psyonix, they may be approved by Psyonix, but they're not Psyonix run. They're run on Facet's platform and Faceit stream in the case of Universal Open, and Gnarly just do things their own way. You know, and again, both streams are hosted on completely different channels. They have completely different audiences, which are completely different to the main audience of Rocket League, who are all subscribed to the Rocket League channel. That's why RLCS gets the most viewership in any Rocket League tournament, because all of the primary esports operations are done through that channel, and any other stream, no matter whether it be through a big LAN like Gnarly or one of the Renegade Cup things, if it's not going through that channel, it's not getting a major amount of viewership in Rocket League. That's just the way that Psyonix has set things up. So the fact you've ignored this is like, it does hint to me that you have some other ulterior motives and that you're trying to prove something else, which is part of the main problem with me with this, is that it builds up this story. It's like, oh, it might have done it. There's a probable chance, in my opinion, that they've done it, but you don't actually prove any beyond unreasonable doubt evidence. You give circumstantial stuff at best, and then you put out some accusations which I absolutely do not believe that any of them are true, to be honest.
And for me, the conclusion pretty much sums up, and just literally reading this off, I hope, and all fans of Rocket League probably join me in hoping, that there is a legitimate reason for the low viewership, and that Psyonix is simply being obnoxious, refusing to acknowledge the host, because anything else would be a huge story and crippling blow for the future. So you've not come to a conclusion, you're just coming to another sort of like reasoning statement. That's not a conclusion there, which I just find so weird, is that he's just put out loads of statements but not actually come to a solid point. And again, that more stands there like they're going, they're not just being obnoxious. That's not being obnoxious, that's just being professional, because you wouldn't do that. It's all coming from, I would say, a wrong mindset and wrong knowledge. Hence why I said it seems to me more like a very smart 16-year-old with his whole presenting, but not knowing how things are actually run in a business sense. That's it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this did still make it to the top of the Reddit, and I don't actually have the Reddit comments on hand, but I definitely remember some really obnoxious things being talked about. Cloudfield was tagged in, you know, the voice of reason essentially in this subreddit. Like he leveled it straight in his own opinion, as why it's probably not going to end up being anything of any decency. And again, you know, just not to harp on the guy too much, but that's just, you know, again, a lot of the worries that have been brought up are probably less than worrying, all things considered. Like, there's very little reason for any of this to be considered any more than just a small thing, basically.
To be honest, this is just, like I said, the natural progression of esport. It's not, I wouldn't say dying, but like I said, the hype's going from it. It's getting a little bit stale, hence why I was saying you need those player items to come in this LAN. If they suddenly went, RLCS is going to be 12 teams next season, that 60,000 sort of viewership number would rise massively. Are you going to say that's view botting then? You know, it's just because there's massive hype for a new change in a format, and that's just how things work. People get bored in entertainment. And
Yeah,
they also get hyped in that regard.
and if there's one thing I want to take away from this is that broader discussion. It's just like, is Rocket League getting stale? I mean, certainly with regards to the viewer numbers and across the entire season, that's the only solid thing that he's provided, and that is something that has worried me. Just doing the eye test generally from watching RLCS this past season, of seeing how the numbers have turned up. For me, it doesn't seem to ring as well as it did last season or the season before. I still remember like watching that, and I was like, oh my god, we've got this tournament here from the Rocket League thing that's doing better than this other tournament for a LAN event in Counter-Strike. And yeah, it's a tier 2 LAN, but still, what does that mean for the actual World Championships at the end of the season? Like, and that level of excitement is not here anymore because the game the game and the esport has gotten stale. I think the serious things need to be done to try and change that. And again, I'm glad that this kind of article did bring that to the forefront of discussion. Unfortunately, I think it's overshadowed by the overall quality of the piece itself.
Yeah, that is just unfortunate. I'm still just there, like, completely agreeing, like, what this shows, pretty much, because the numbers are there. He's not lying about that. He's just literally got screenshots from ESC, which, again, anyone can do. And it is just pretty much coming to the point of these numbers are pretty easily justified when it comes down to the fact that it is just people getting bored of the format, or just bored of it. Rocket League, the RLCS format as it is now, would be best if it's like a small one-off event, like the Worlds, essentially, which it is to some degree, but then Worlds is all this other stuff running alongside it. So it's the whole ecosystem needs to change for Rocket League to essentially make it more exciting to watch for this, anyway, for RLCS.
Yeah, and there's plenty of discussions that we can have about that. Obviously, we've talked about it a little bit in the past on the show. I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot more going forward. Yeah, like just it is quite funny that this was the big thing of this week. Is like I appreciate the discussion, but like you really have to formulate it in a way that does actually make a certain amount of sense and makes a point. And unfortunately, this doesn't do that. And I hope the guy doesn't take this too much to heart. I know obviously I've ramped on him a little bit. I've been a bit of an arsehole. That's just who I am generally. I'm not fucking denying it. I'm a bit of a dick. If you met me in real life, come down Gfinity Arena like on week 3 and you'll find that out just right. Yeah, that's it for our hit piece today. Are Rocket League's viewership numbers fraudulently high? Actually, let's see if we can answer the question for him, Bacon. Are Rocket League numbers fraudulently high? In my opinion, that small blip is just a blip. That's all. They're actually pretty low, all things considered. And again, that probably speaks more volumes for the state of Rocket League more than anything else.
Why would you view bot for the very last game? That makes no sense at all. Like I reckon, it's just a problem with Twitch front page. Probably they just didn't get put on front page, and that was when it kicked in. It was righted, something along that. It don't really matter on that regard. The low numbers, like I said, it's just people getting a bit bored. There's going to be changes coming up. Everyone's expecting it because there was, in the old days anyway, when they're working with Twitch, it was expected to evolve. They didn't evolve it for, last season and this season when they left Twitch. Which is just sort of that science coming onto their own 2 feet to run it. So I'd expect next season them to right all wrongs. Well, not all wrongs, but make big jumps forward anyway.
Well, those are our thoughts. If you're listening right now and you want to get involved in the conversation, then you can currently join the Discord. If you're watching in Twitch chat, it's !Discord. If you're listening to the audio version, then all the details for the Discord link are in the show's description. Make sure you also follow us on RLAfterShock. And speaking of the Discord as well, if you want to join the Discord, you can ask us a question, and we might answer it here on the show. And in fact, we do have 3 questions from our good friend over at Frostbite to continue with the show. The first one, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when reading it, but I think I'm going to try and pick it apart anyway, is would you rather have Rocket League be player or organization based looking at the future? I'm assuming he's talking about like generally
I think RLCS, like would you want it to be organization franchised or player based teams which orgs then buy in a bit like it is now? That's the way I look at it. Like, do you want it to be running like Overwatch League where the franchises are the ones that these say Cloud9, G2, they're the ones that own the team, they can then pick the players? Or is it based like what Rocket League now is, where the teams are the players and you're just buying in the rights for that? Which one would we prefer? Frostbite would agree.
Well, Frostbite is in the chat, so I'm sure maybe he can clarify it. But we'll take this down this particular conversation. Oh, that is exactly what he means. Okay, well, I've already expressed my sort of like disdain for a franchising system. I think that franchising is very anti-esports, and I'm a bit of an like a new generation OG, basically. I've that doesn't make any fucking sense, I know, but when I first got into esports, I researched everything about it. I've researched the history of Counter-Strike in particular. I'm very well versed in a lot of historical elements, not quite as much as other analysts in the scene, but I know much about the big points like CGS. I know about the ESWCs and World Cyber Games, everything like that. So for me, it's an understanding of what the current system currently does, and it's a system that doesn't really exist anywhere in regular sport. Like a lot of sports these days have like franchising systems which block off a major portion of what makes grassroots so attainable. Because if you're a team and you're doing well in your grassroots tournaments, then for example, you're in NFL, for example, National Football League. If you're a football team in the NFL, outside of the NFL, doing well, potentially could rival some NFL teams at the bottom level. You've got no progression because that's all franchised. Everyone buys a slot, they get revenue share, and sure, that's great from a business perspective, but for me, the reason why I was so attracted to esports was because it's not that exclusivity club. Because I'm sure you all know the stories, right? You got that nerdy kid in school and he's completely absent from all the jocks, so he just grows to, hate all manner of sports because, that's just not his kind of thing. That was me in school, right? And I've carried that over to now that I'm 21 going on 22. I'm fucking, I absolutely hate most levels of traditional sports, but I love esports so much because not only is it centered around video games, it's a whole lot more honest in that regard, that any team can just form from a 3-man unit, work their way through qualifiers, work for the RLRS, and make their way to the World Championships in theory. Obviously, in practical, it doesn't always work that way, but that's the theory. Anyone has a chance. And I think if you add franchising to the top level of Rocket League, that's where that honesty completely goes away. That's why I've been so against it in stuff like Overwatch, because they started off the fact of being a franchise league, and I was like, I'm not very interested in that. In Counter-Strike, they've tried to set that up as well. Gfinity is one of the main exceptions because Gfinity overall have a net positive to the EU scene, which is something that's really close to my heart, obviously. Initially, I was very much against it, but the fact that it's also not a main rival to the RLCS, I don't think it does that much harm. So when it comes to side tournaments and little bits like that, I think I'll be okay with that. But for the RLCS itself, I think the current system in regards to relegations and promotions, I think that is about 90% good.
Yeah, so at the moment with RLCS, franchising or the organization base just wouldn't work. It wouldn't fit into the system. Overwatch, it works because you've got Overwatch League, which is franchised, and then the tier, I would say technically below it, their contenders stuff is player-based. They can come in, so you can even be an un-org team, or you can get teams like NRG, Cloud9, or whatever, put in their own teams there under whatever name they want. However you have it, they can go up through there. And so you've got like this mixture of both, which of course the franchise teams then look at the contenders teams they've got through, and that's already got a decent prize pool that players can live off anyway. And they generally quite often hire them in. That's the next step up. The franchise is the top level, but the level below it is still incredibly respected and it's still a very high level. Rocket League doesn't have that. RLRS, like if you were to make RLCS like locked in and on the prize money it is now, RLRS would essentially have to be at the level that RLCS is now and then create that new level on top, which just isn't logical. The only sort of middle ground between it is like you're saying with is it not I'm thinking ECS for some reason, where near enough the teams buy their franchise sort of like spot, buy the not franchise spot, but they buy their stocks in it to then profit from the org, which is a good middle ground. But unless there is a solid progression, like a best of both worlds, like I said, with how Overwatch League is doing it, it's a franchise spot is not possible, or not, I'd say, the best for the health of the game. And the only reason why that works for Overwatch is because Blizzard and Activision have so much money that they can just do it, and that's it.
And the key thing is also remember about the key thing to remember about the Overwatch League as well is that that's how it was designed from the start. Obviously, RLCS was not designed like that, And I don't think it ever can fit that sort of methodology. Again, I don't want it to do that. Maybe at this point, all the organizations have a complete opposite viewpoint because most of them have lost faith in what Rocket League can do. But you know, I still think that for the sake of the game and for the sake of the scene as a whole, you need to keep that sort of like lateral movement. I think the best sort of thing is that if you have that sort of like ECS style at the top with multiple ladders going down, like the ESL and ESEA system. For those of you not familiar with how ESEA works or ESL works, is that they've got their professional league and Counter-Strike, and then below that you've got ESEA and their Mountain Dew league. Then below that you've got advanced. Below that you've got intermediate. Below that you've got main. Below that you've got intermediate, and then you've got open. So there's like 6 steps or so, and anyone can enter from open, make their way further up the ladder, potentially get picked up by a different team. And again, it works into that idea of open circuit. And then at the top, if you can make it there, you can buy a share in the league itself, get revenue share opportunities, and sell that on for profit later on down the line. Which again, I think that is the best of both worlds. I think that's the best league structure that we could possibly get in Rocket League. That's the way I'd like to see things get done.
From the current stands anyway, and from
the current standards, yeah.
How Rocket League should evolve, because who knows, they could just suddenly then go next season, they could just somehow throw in, let's say, $2 million and change RLRS to be that sort of contender structure, and then RLCS then becomes some sort of like franchise structure. And this is the sort of time now which there would have to be a complete massive revamp, not even revamp, a remake essentially, where they're just completely changing the structure, or the natural progression of just evolving it, increasing the size, means that they could never do team-based franchising. It's just not going to happen for Rocket League anyway.
So the second question from Frostbite comes through. Does the Rocket League scene have enough money for content creators in terms of sponsorships for the scene to grow more and be viable for content creators? Well, for a start, no. The fact that we don't have a sponsorship. I mean, here's the thing, right? You've got guys like Sunless Khan who can make a living because, you know, his content is more aimed towards a casual audience, a sort of like a bit of a best of both worlds. Like, he focuses on esports content, but he focuses on it like well within the context of the game. But content like ours, I think, has a little bit of a ways to go before it is very viable at all. Because obviously we cater to a very, very specific audience in Rocket League, and that's the hardcore esports fans who want to know about the discussion, who want to know our opinions in particular as well. Because we're not massive personalities, right? We're just 2 community commentators who work down the community scene. I'm not even a full major part of Rocket League. I work in Counter-Strike and PUBG now. Like, you know, I go between different games. So for certain, you know, I can say that this is all voluntarily. Personally, I sunk money into this project just to get it started, and I haven't seen any return as of yet from investment. As for sponsors, this is another thing about RLCS and that being top heavy. There are so many great sponsors from outside of the world of esports, which is a fantastic thing, but they're all in the RLCS, and they're all in the Universal Open because they have those connections to outside of esports.
I'm just thinking now, the Rival series anyway doesn't technically have its own sponsors and that. It's just the adverts sort of leaking over, I'd say, for like Snickers and that.
They don't even have any adverts for Rival series, I don't think. No, I don't remember seeing a single one. Like, it was always for RLCS.
For me, that's already a lost opportunity there, making whatever. But you get that. It's all, the whole esports scene of Rocket League is focused around RLCS, and to some degree you can say the Gfinity Elite Series, but outside of that there is nothing, and that needs to be changed, I'd say, for a sponsorship revenue. Talking to the Silence guys, don't get me wrong, recently they were like, you know, with tournaments, if you want us to help you get sponsors, we're perfectly fine, you know, with you putting our emails down, you know, our contacts, that if, say, for example, Burger King suddenly go, oh, we want to sponsor, you know, we go to Sponsor King, and go, oh, we want you to sponsor one of our tournaments, and, you know, we can give near enough Psyonix as a reference, which is cool, but it's essentially that's going at a wrong staging. That's like, you've got the top, you've got the bottom, but it's having the burger without the meat in the center. That is what it is, you know. And the RLRS and that sort of the Renegade Cups now do need sponsors. Like, the guys running the tournaments would have had no problem at all if Psyonix just suddenly went, oh, the Renegade Cup is sponsored, like I said, just using Burger King as the example, and you've got to put their ads in with it. Absolutely fine. That makes no difference to us. But the whole health of the scene makes it so much better. And basically, I'm always one that's for making esports more mainstream because it makes it more official, more legitimate. And having those sponsors already lined up from Psyonix would have probably been the best sort of like solution to this at the moment, because putting forward proposals for the Renegade Cup, they were happy for us to put extra sponsors on top of their Renegade Cup. They're absolutely fine with that. But these small community orgs don't really have the capabilities or the networking to be able to get sponsors on board, because sponsors aren't looking for, you know, a 1,000 viewer channel in Rocket League anyway. It's different for, you know, CS or whatever, where normally in those games it's more betting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you see at that level, which that's another problem for Rocket League.
Yeah, that's a crucial point as well. And you know, going back to specific for content creators like us and AfterShock in general, one of our primary sponsors would be esports bookies. It would be like, you know, people like that. But with Psyonix having such a bit of a banhammer going on around that starter sponsor, we can't really bring those guys onto our show. We can't really do that without getting into some really hot water. I mean, chances are I'd love to do that. I mean, if we were the watershed moment, I'd be fucking proud of that. Yeah. But as it stands right now, no one really wants to touch Rocket League. And again, there's a part of that also down to the problems with Rocket League as a whole, and the fact that the sponsors are all at the top. Psyonix don't really want to support stuff like in-game items, so a lot of the big brands in esports are thinking of getting out, and there's other big brands that don't want to get involved either. So there's a bunch of different problems that keep sponsors away, and because of that lack of trickle down means that there's very little money for us involved. Like, we put up our free time every hour and a half every week to record this and do it for the sake of just the fact that we love the game. Obviously there's a little bit of it's passion. Obviously there's a little bit of side of like, okay, well, if we do this, then in the future maybe we could become big names and actually become big casters within the space. But even then, that's probably not making any money off of AfterShock directly. This is like a lost leader sort of thing. And again, if we were geared to a much more casual audience and focused on stuff like DLCs and doing different content packages, and again referencing like Sunless Khan or Johnny Boy, like those guys can make it well, because Johnny's got like they've got such good fan bases already. They've built that up for a very long time, and they've also got sponsors behind them. Like in the case of Sunless Khan, he's backed by Allegiance. That's not even a sponsor. That's actually an organization that's just paying him to make content. Johnny Boy is just getting money through subs, which we can't get because our partner's not even our channel's not even affiliated. And I'm sure if we got it affiliated, there'd be someone out there that wanted to subscribe. And Patreon's off the table.
It's just that we do it once a week, which doesn't fall within, I think, you've got to do 7 a month for affiliate, so it's not really going to happen for us.
Something like that. And then obviously Patreon's off the table because our audience is way too niche. Basically, you're right there, Bacon. dropping
just
stuff on the floor.
It's fine.
What did you drop?
It was just a pen. That's it. Lost my marble.
Shout outs to Ben in the background, but money in Rocket League is a very weird thing, because unless you're at the top, you're not making enough to make a living. And again, that's the reason why I'm involved in CS:GO and PUBG and Rocket League rather than just being involved in one.
Mm-hmm. And I've got a day job. You know, I do tech jobs. That's it. You gotta make your money somehow. You gotta live.
You do. You have to live. You have to live indeed.
Unfortunately, the opposite option is not a good one.
And then in light of the question above, Frostbite also asks, what do you look for in sponsorships? And I'm assuming this is pertinent only to AfterShock. I'd be down, to be honest, I'd be down for any sponsorship, to be honest. Like, I'll fucking take it. Like, there is a certain level of ethics involved.
You'd only go for a brand which you can actually respect. Like, I know from, just for example, using the company name, when we were at Epicland, the X Gamer stuff. Now, I know they do a lot more grassroots stuff around EU because they're a UK company, and especially at esports. So if suddenly they came to us, I'd be there like, actually, your product's good. Yeah. But if it was suddenly a product like, let's just say, what is it?
RLBets.org.
Yeah, RLBets.org, or some sort of like shady, you know, you get those crappy little thumb grips that go over controllers and that.
No,
like
yeah,
the knockoff
those
ones.
things.
I'd be there like, nah, that's just, you know, that's us cheapening our brand. That's proper selling out. If you're going to get sponsorship, it's got to be on your level, and it's got to be a product which you yourself can endorse because you like it. Don't just like sell out for money. That's naff.
Do you remember when that RL bets thing came about and they were like, oh, be part of our tournament that'll be casted by Johnny Boy, and it was like, what the fuck's going on? And the account disappeared like a month later.
It looked like some sort of like 10-year-old kid had made it.
It looked like a fucking scam. Like it was so blatantly a scam. I was like, mate, I'm not touching this.
The worrying thing about that though
ball.
was that I can remember Johnny Boy didn't respond to it at all, which I don't know is just it flew under the radar for him, or if it was just like he was there like, I don't want to say a single thing. I've said yes thinking this was legit, and it's really not. You know, it's just that case of, I don't think he saw anything wrong in it, you know, at the time. I think he just got caught up in what was a scam, you know, and people just using his name because that's what scammers do. And he probably just didn't want to give it any light, give it any attention, which in one way is a good response to it, because, you know, if he responded to it, then his sort of like viewer base or whatever might have seen it and just got sucked into that scam. So
yeah,
it's a do if you don't, do if you do sort of situation.
And again, that's the reason why we stick to a lot of ethics in regards to sponsorships. Like, that's something I don't even fuck around with. Like, because coming from Counter-Strike myself, like, I've had to make dealings with so many shady sponsors and so many shady organizations just doing my job, essentially. It's like, does this sit well with my ethical spectrum? Is this something I'm willing to get involved in for the sake of getting however many dollars per map? You know, like, is this a good idea? And in certain cases, it is not a good idea. And certainly with my own product, like AfterShock, like, I absolutely would not be down for RLBets.org to come on and fucking, you know, have their name on my product when I feel like that probably will end up hurting things around. That's why whenever I bring up sponsors, like, especially in the gambling region, I always bring up Betway or Bet365 or Rivalry, especially Rivalry, because Rivalry has like one of the hardest to obtain licenses in all of gambling. And again, I wouldn't even bring gambling into Rocket League at all if it wasn't for shit like that. Like, those are the only sponsors I'd be like, that's a good idea.
Those are the free betting orgs I'd actually say, yeah, I would trust instantly with Rocket League. And I'm one of the people like you, Jay, they're like, Rocket League should be allowing betting, but from certain sources, like just near enough go, okay, you've got the contract essentially for it, and do it by tournament basis, giving out contracts to people you trust. If someone doesn't have your contract, then they're, you know, being illegal, and then you can crack down on them. You know, it's just how it works. Even then, you know, like, that's the thing about this show is, like, if Rivalry or Betway or Bet365 wanted to get involved at the ground level and just like get their taste of Rocket League, something like RLAfterShock would be a fantastic fucking idea, you know? Like, again, I'm using this as to sell us up, and I was just like, yeah, come on, guys, give us money. But, you know, like, I'd be down to give, like, some bonus codes out and stuff like that, you know? Like, again, because it's a source I trust, you know? Like, some of the people that I've looked up to in the industry, some of the people that I know are reputable, trust these kind of companies. But outside of the gambling thing, just to, like, you know, broaden the horizons a little bit. We're not just focusing on gambling. We're not fucking addicts. You know, I'd be down to do hardware sponsorships if they're reputable, like Still Series. Still Series are great, actually. I can't wait for my paycheck. I'm going to get myself one of those Arctises that you're wearing, because those, like, they've impressed. Every time I've used one, they've impressed me beyond belief. So I want to. I want to get my hands on one. And as well as that, you know, maybe like actually the other day, I looked because we were having our meeting with this, and it was just like I was actually I was on, like, near enough.
So hang on. Let me give context. Basically, like, every few weeks we have like a meeting, me, Bacon, and Ben, about AfterShock and where we're going, stuff, plans for the next show, plans for the show afterwards. Which, by the way, we've got some really good plans for next week's show, so make sure you stick around for that. But we have a chat, and we have a talk for things. And Bacon was putting up a chandelier in his house. And he's wearing those Arctises to basically, like, talk to us, because obviously you got to be hands free. And then Saw comes on, and he's like, oh shit, I'm gonna mute myself because you can hear that. We fucking couldn't hear it. The mic actually blocked it out. I'm like, oh my god, I'm buying myself one of those as soon as possible.
Like, but don't get me wrong, the sound of the mic is crap.
It's terrible. It's fucking terrible.
I get the purpose though, because if you're gaming, you just want a clear mic. It's very tinny for what it is, but the actual dynamic range it's got it is ace. So if you're actually a console gamer or something, I recommend these quite highly. You're not going to sound beautiful. You're not going to be able to do podcasts, but for gaming alone, it's ace, and wireless is pretty good. Like, I mean, I'm charging them at the moment. But one thing, and I always say about any wireless headsets, the actual freedom to go walking around your house whilst listening to your music from your PC.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. It was something I didn't think before, because I was going to get the HyperX Cloud 2s originally, and then a mate went, no, spend the extra 20 quid for wireless. I did. It's so good. Plus, as well, they have like a second input, so I can put like my phone in to them to play off as well. It's just, you get that on a lot of headsets, don't get me wrong, but it's just the added little things are so good.
I mean, just make sure your headsets don't break after 6 months of use, because otherwise they just become big fat fucking paperweights.
Corsair one?
Corsair Voids, yep.
Yeah,
the dongle was a USB stick, and just by taking it out once, the whole thing bent and it broke, and then they wouldn't replace it. I'm just like, mate, do you know what? You can fuck right off. So don't sponsor us, Corsair. Sponsor us Steel Series instead.
Actually, Corsair's keyboards, I will go on as
I've got a Corsair keyboard right now. Actually, the K rapid fire, one of the K70s or something. But you know, yeah, hardware sponsors would be great as well. You know, I'd be happy to recommend. Again, I'd want to test the hardware first. You know, to get a sample thing before I'm like, yeah, this is solid. I'll do it. Because again, when it comes to sample them digitally, when it comes to sponsors, you know, like it's something you don't really want to mess around with. I would like to have a reputable sponsor that's not going to screw people over, which is again why I turn to most of the big three. And I'd like a hardware sponsor that is ethical, very, very ethical. And I know Steel Series are great and ethical. Corsair are pretty good as well. Maybe even talk to like a computer manufacturers, do some Rocket League based builds. I don't know.
Oh, could you imagine that from like Origin or something, like an actual like. Because you always get those acrylic glass side panels, like just having the Rocket League logo like laser printed into it.
Well, I mean, Epicland recently just cut a deal with Scan.co.uk, and they just got 22 i7 1080 Ti's, like these fucking mini PCs that are absolutely baller. They're insane. Like, you know, and not even a big name like Origin. Like Scan's been supporting grassroots esports for ages. I know that they sponsor like Dignitas, for example, who were a UK company before they were bought by the 76ers. So there's loads. You know, there's loads of sponsors that I love to take on board. Again, it's all a case of what they want to do us in particular. And at the moment, I don't see.
Small. Still.
Yeah, I don't see anything happening right there, but again, that's a conversation for when we actually do get some, you know, a large presence in Rocket League, which at the moment we don't. Again,
no, yeah, it's too small for us, but the tournament organisers around Europe, please just get in contact with them, because they would love to put stuff.
DreamHack, do more Rocket League stuff, please. I beg you.
More Rocket League stuff.
Anyways. So thank you, Frostbite, for the questions. We actually took a lot longer than I was expecting, because we just went off on so many fucking tangents. You know, thanks again, Frostbite, for the questions. If you want to send in some questions, and again, if you're in the Twitch chat right now, you can type an ! Discord, follow the link, and join our Discord community. There is a text channel for mailbag. If you put that in there, chances are we'll answer your question live on air. Again, if you're watching the VOD or listening to the audio podcast, then you can find out the details in the description. Right, let's go on to the tournament roundup, because we only got half an hour. We've got a lot of shit to cover, because Rocket League, the Rocket Baguette Grand Prix came through. Round 2 was last week. I don't want to touch on it too much. There's only 2 results I actually want to focus on with that one, but we'll get to it as we come to them. The final bracket had 8 teams: Savage versus Red Reserve, Copenhagen Flames versus Nordavind, Schmootly versus XL, and Method versus Team Secret. Those were the top 8 essentially, and it eventually culminated in Red Reserve versus Team Secret at the very, very end, where Red Reserve came out on top 4-3 in a best of 7 series. It was actually one of the fun matches of the day of the tournament as well. Like, certainly worthy of a grand final. But before we get to that, there are a few more things I do want to focus on, and the first one is Schmootly. This is a team that are so fucking good, Bacon. Like, actually gets me really excited. And it sucks that we didn't get to talk about them last week, because I would have loved to delve into their round 2 match against Red Reserve more in depth, because holy shit, that was an epic when we were casting it, and I still remember the look on our faces as soon as that last goal came through. Like, it was an overtime bet in game 5. Like, and with these guys also beating out Method, like, I'll be shocked if they didn't decide to forego their previous commitments and join up together. Like you were talking about how like Schmookly 2/3 of them are under Nordavind as like a completely Norwegian roster. I really want to see them pick up Sacred and run with that one because Schmookly are a serious force to be reckoned with going forward.
So Nordavind, the way they run, they're part of this small internal Norwegian, league, and they're very much a roster that picked up Placebo to fill the Gfinity Elite Series. They wanted a team that could win Gfinity Elite or put up a good fight. Placebo was a good one to pick up for them, but they also have to have this internal Norwegian squad. So picking up Sacred and Mad and Focus for the Elite Series because they were drafts. I'm pretty much expecting them when they get to their own internal Scandinavian or Norwegian stuff that Mads will be put onto that roster, or Sacred, sorry, I get confused because they're draft picks. Is going to be put onto that roster and they're fine. And that's going to be quite a cool one because how long is this Nordavind sort of like contract with the Placebo roster going for? Is it just a one season thing? Is it 2 seasons of like Gfinity Elite? Because most of the time, these orgs that are part of the Gfinity Elite Series sign teams for the length of Gfinity Elite. So they'll say 2 seasons, meaning you also get that in between time being paid for, which is quite cool. But if they say only went for 1, then by January you could see Nordavind pick up this Schmookly side, and Placebo will have to go elsewhere to get a roster, which I don't know. It's a weird little. We could see some roster swaps going on around January, which could be quite cool. With different teams looking into RLRS, because we know there is a lot of interest in RLRS at the moment for orgs and teams to come in. RLCS, unfortunately, not really getting that same treatment, but that is exciting for that sort of second stage of Rocket League, isn't it, really?
It is, and actually now that we look back in retrospective, because like back at the time when we saw Schmookly take out Method and Red Reserve, we didn't really know that they had any dealings with Nordavind, the potential that they could be dealing with Nordavind now. It's like, I really want to see them take on the current Nordavind side now. Like I was looking back through the results, hoping that there was like a result that we saw.
Who knows?
At some point,
they could be scrimming each other. Like
they could be. Like I really would love to see. I'd love to see the results of those scrims. I'd love to see how well they're performing against the main state Nordavind roster, because like fuck, these guys are really really good. Like it's completely legit to get 2 best of 5 victories against RLRS teams. Like they are RLRS caliber. I can see them making it through in the next season, and yeah, man. Again, I wrote them off way too quickly last time we saw them around. Ooh. I wrote them off as well for the XL series when they faced up against XL in the quarterfinals. Unfortunately, they did get swept in that one. I was casting that with the Craftsman, but yeah. Other than that, just that one blip on the radar. Schmookly to get into the top 8. Regardless of that, it's still such a good fucking achievement, considering what other teams were also in the groups.
For me as well, Schmookly being this all-Scandinavian squad could lead to some cool new orgs coming into it, like I was saying. Like, do you imagine a team like, I know North goes for more Danish players, but they have had other Scandinavian squads, teams of that caliber. Sorry, no. There's other behind-the-scenes aspects in regards to North that probably mean they won't be picking up another team ever. I'll say no more than that. But yeah, the Counter-Strike thing's been a bit of a disaster. So continue, mate. But you get what I mean. Having these purely one nation teams add a lot of story to Rocket League, and then of course it's a lot more appealing to orgs coming to pick them up because it's a lot easier for them to sponsor. The biggest problem that you'll notice with sponsoring, like I said, the EU tournaments is, say, Vodafone's probably not the best bit, but Scan wanting to sponsor, let's say, Rewind, but Rewind getting in German, French, Spanish, Italian players, which Scan doesn't really facilitate. They're a UK only org, and that's why
I think they do EU shipping. Hold on, let me check this.
They might do, but what player wants to spend 20 quid extra to get it shipped out to them when they've got their own internal? That's basically
true.
And Amazon pretty much covers a lot of the same stuff, but it's just that point of within the UK, we'll back up Scan. I've ordered from them. Same with Overclockers. It's good for them. That's why they'll do grassroots stuff internally, like Epic LAN, Insomnia, all of that. But when it comes to online, I wouldn't say international, but European stuff, you can understand why they don't want to go on that same level. If that makes sense. But if they've got a team that's, say, a fully British team, that would be a completely different sort of like choice. A bit like when we used to have Infused, Doomsy, Sebadam, and Bluey. That was and Ignite, of course. That was a really exciting time to have 4 English players all on the same roster, because the sponsorships there could have been great for smaller companies to come into it.
So Scan actually do EU shipping. So it's most European countries. You have to get like a quote again. Scan sponsor us. But no, again, those are quite decent sponsors to have. But we've gone past the sponsor thing. Let's continue talking about the Grand Prix, because I want to talk about Copenhagen Flames next. This is a team that obviously bombed the hell out of the RLRS, and the future was looking very, very bleak for them overall.
And it looks odd now, considering Gfinity.
Yeah. And especially with Chacaron leaving, it was like, oh, this is getting a bit of a clusterfuck now. Now he's part of Reason Gaming, and now it's like, well, do they have any real chance going into this next tournament? And I mean, credit to them, obviously they made top 8, which was the expected result. But they had some pretty good results on the way. There were a lot of results where I was like, okay, this is actually pretty damn legit. The first thing that jumps to mind is their series against Team Secret in Pool 3 in round 2. It's a 3-2 scoreline. That's the second upset I wanted to bring to light. Because I think there was an upset. Like, certainly Secret should have won that series hands down every day. And I know Talacto's in the chat. Sorry, buddy, but you did drop the ball on that one. But
they seem to have a little bit of an off day as well, because I can remember on to the second bracket, because it was a double elim. They went to game 5 with WLF, which again should be another game, which that one should be even easier for them to go to game 5. For me, that was probably a bit of an off day. Good that they made it through, of course, because they got to the finals in the end, but it does show that teams not playing on form whilst others playing on form is a big difference to these guys.
Dearing me. Yeah, but Copenhagen Flames overall, I think had a very, very positive run throughout the course of this particular tournament, and doing all right. What's Tylacto saying?
He said, "Why would you want to play well in a tournament? Come on."
Of course. Why would you want to play well in the biggest thing in grassroots Rocket League? I mean, it's completely open. I believe also we just got a host. If Ben's telling me the correct information, I can't actually see it because because Twitch is being really shit at the moment, but. Fruity, my boy, thank you very much for the host and returning the favor we did to you a few weeks ago. So a big shout out to all the Fruity fans. So yeah, again, a little bit of confusion going on live in the middle of the broadcast, but whatever. But yeah, Copenhagen Flames, let's get your thoughts on those guys real quick.
So Copenhagen Flames, to you guys that don't know at home, it's going to be a bit interesting what they do with the Renegade Cup. We don't really know what the whole deal is with Reason Gaming, because officially it seems Chacaron has left the roster, which means that it's now Didris, Friss, and I think Fuzz. Their manager is stepping to fill that, but with how the Renegade Cup works, they've got to lose those points, because essentially they're going from 3 men down to 2. Adding a new player means that it's now technically a new roster, so they lose those points from coming into the semi-finals, which is
that's a lot of points, by the way.
That is a lot. 350 goes to runners-up, 300 to third, and then 3,000 to third, and then 2,900 to fourth if the Baguettes wanted to go that way. That's how it sort of divvies out, and then just lose 100 each time. So near enough, if Copenhagen Flames could make it 2 quarterfinals for the other 3, they'd pretty much be in a good standing to make it through to the finals in February. So this is a bit of an upset. But Chacaron has only taken Pugsay with him, the sub for Copenhagen Flames, over to Reason. Now, what's the sort of like contract there? Maybe Chacaron can still play under, Copenhagen Flames under the Renegade Cup. Like, what? There could be just a small little one where Chacaron's only representing Reason Gaming for the Gfinity Elite Series. Outside of that, he's not tied to anything, and it's just the rumor mill of Liquipedia sort of just being a little bit off there. I don't know really what's going on. So next week, well, later on this week, on Wednesday, maybe Thursday at latest, we'll find out whether he's left for good and he's not going to be on the Copenhagen squad anymore or not. It's a weird one.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's not that he's not going to be on Copenhagen Flames anymore, because he did put a tweet out saying that his future was with Reason Gaming. And again, it's a case of Copenhagen Flames. Well, what's next for the main two-man core? Like, are they going to be like Pugze is still listed as a sub? I don't know how true that is. Are they going to go looking for more players? Like, is the project going to completely end? Because Copenhagen Flames did only pick up. Because Copenhagen Flames only did pick up this team for RLRS, as far as my knowledge is, as far as my knowledge goes, to be honest. And Fruity actually just confirming that for me right now. So from where that stands, it seems like it was just a quick money grab to try and get some it's a cynical move, all things considered, but they're just trying to get into the RLRS for a season. Hopefully they can stick around. Obviously it hasn't worked out that way, and here in the Renegade Cup they've shown up, but now it seems like these players are not going to have a home anymore. And again, that sort of does bring credence to what I was discussing about 2 weeks ago, whether they would do that. You know, that unfortunately that hasn't worked out that way.
Well, because let's say Pugze isn't under the same contract for Reason, then that wouldn't hurt them for the Renegade Cup because he was already on as the sub. So a player leaving doesn't hurt your Renegade Cup points. It's adding players which actually hurts it. While I'll say, if you haven't got points already and you're watching this, just make sure you've got a full 5-man roster. Have 2 subs there. If you don't know, I'm thinking of teams like I think it's AS Monaco are good for this, where they do have 5-man rosters. Because if someone leaves, joins another team, it's not going to hurt you. A 2 leave, it's not going to hurt you. It is purely just adding an extra player to the roster, which means you have to lose your points, because that's how the rules define it for the Renegade Cup. Take that as it is. Like, I get the idea behind it, and I actually back the idea behind it, but the execution, probably not best. This one. Yeah,
probably not best at all in the case of Copenhagen Flames. I mean, they still make it to the semis. I think that means they get a... Oh, yeah, they also made third place. They also get a small amount of money.
That's a funny story.
You know, let's get to that next, actually, because this is the next big thing as well. And you have more insight to me than this. But this tweet went out in the middle of the semi-final playoffs. We weren't casting that. We were in the middle of TCS at the time. But Rocket Baguette tweeted this tweet out. Sadly, XL were unavailable to play with the roster they registered for the Rocket Baguette Grand Prix. We have no choice but to apply the rules and DQ them. We will now move on to the grand finals of the Renegade Cup. So they basically forfeit the semis and the third place matchup, which I think, according to the placements, that means they actually finished out of the money but still in the points. No, sorry, they got $250 overall. But like, fucking hell, what happened here, dude? What happened here?
Was speaking to one of the lads that are in know about this, and essentially, because XL were looking on form, you know, the day before taking down Schmickley 4-0, they looked good and could go for a good run in this. The problem was Niels was in London for Gfinity, you know, early. He was doing some advertising stuff. If you noticed any of Twitter and that, he was doing a lot of promotion stuff. And his plan was to essentially go along to one of the Belong centres in London, which is like, imagine, for you guys that maybe don't know, an internet cafe that specializes in gaming. So you just go up.
LAN center is more appropriate of a description, I think.
So you go up, you just rent a PC for however long, and they've got all the games installed on it, whatever have you. Now, Niels turned up to the Belong center without a reservation, and obviously, that's from my understanding of what I was told, and of course couldn't play, so they had to forfeit out of it, and so that hurt their chances on the day, which is just
pretty poor planning all in all. Like, you certainly should have accounted for this.
Their official sub, McLovin, wasn't on the Smash GG.
That's another piece of poor planning right there. Like, surely you would put the sub on the roster to make sure it's like, okay, if shit goes down, we need you, right?
Yeah, that's it. He wasn't on there, and of course,
man,
when they did realize they couldn't add him, because that was another big problem, that they're not allowed to add a sub during the tournament. I don't know if they're allowed to add him now, because technically this same 3-man roster is still there. and they're adding a sub. I think that's going to be probably something more of an exception, which they'll have to go to Psyonix about and ask for. I don't really see too big a deal since it is him coming in as a sub, so that this doesn't happen again. Because on one case, we were actually told by Psyonix that we should really be quite harsh and crack down on teams that are forfeiting out of tournaments, because it messes up the whole schedule of it, to the point of, say, if you were to forfeit out of your first match, then make it through in the second week, make it through to the second week in the lower final because you weren't there on time, and then you forfeited to do the exact same thing the next week on or whatever, or if you were to forfeit out of 2 qualifiers, you should be banned from the rest of the tournament. And to some degree, they're saying maybe talk amongst yourselves and ban people out of the whole of the Renegade Cup. It's Sonic's cracking down and getting the whole serious esports mentality, which I'm behind, but players, I don't think, are on that same mindset about it at the moment. Guys, just turn up to your matches, please, because we don't want this to happen to you, is what I want to get to.
and if you can't turn up, make sure you have the proper provisions in place to have someone who can turn up for you. I think that is really the case, the lesson to be learned from Excel's forfeit in the semis, because up until this point, they were actually looking relatively good, you know? They beat out Schmookly, the team that was extremely hyped. You know, they've been on the up ever since the end of the ever since close to the end of the RLRS, despite the poor performance in that particular tournament. And again, this probably could have been theirs to win, but unfortunately, we're never going to see whether they were able to make it to the finals or not. Secret got that forfeit victory, and they went up against Red Reserve, had one of the most epic grand finals we've seen at a community level, probably since the EU 1K Cup, I think, actually. You know, let's actually talk about that. Let's actually talk about that grand final right now, because obviously Red Reserve won 4-3 in the games. I do not have the specific results on hand, but this was a very, very good match. Like, I think if there's one match you want to go back and watch over the course of the Renegade Cup, it probably would be Red Reserve versus Secret. It was it was quite fun. I mean, certainly from game one, the pacing was set between Red Reserve and Secret. Like, it all came down to just small mistakes being punished overall, and small mistakes in the over rotations that really just pushed Red Reserve over the edge by like a very tiny amount. And again, that comes credence to the scoreline. 4-3 on the board, you know? It
was 4-3, and you gotta think Red Reserve came back from 3-1, I think it was, in game 4 to near enough win 3 games in a row. It was, yeah, looking at it now. And it comes down to, essentially, like you're saying, it's the chemistry of Red Reserve, which will always be their strongest point. Yeah. That's where they get it from. Secret, with the like, you know, the loss of Tigre, bringing in Freaky means they've got to like restructure a little bit, and you can still see that they're growing, which isn't a problem. I think, you know, Secret's always, for me, setting the caliber of top tier RLRS. They're on that borderline. Like I was saying earlier, if they were to expand RLCS out to 12 teams, Secret's an automatic promotion. Method are. Red Reserve and Savage are already, you know, in the promotion playoffs in 3 weeks time, 2 weeks time, 3 weeks time. So that's already like justified. That top 4 are solid RLCS caliber teams. It's just Secret, unfortunately, always seem to have a little bit of a problem with finishing off the job. And, you know, that can be said to the 1 week of them unfortunately going 2 losses, and it was just, it came down to that, them losing out on RLRS, unfortunately, well, the promotion spot, and here just those last 3 games, which...
Yeah, it seems to me like the smallest losses are what hurt Secret the most. And again, it breaks my heart because I want to see them go so much fucking further, man. But for Red Reserve, like, certainly this is a very impressive series from them. I actually want to give a quick shout out to Speed as well, who played, and that's not just because he's in the Twitch chat. That's because he was actually a really, really good player for this roster. Actually, like, he was playing really disciplined. He seemed to know when to aggress when needed, when to fall back when needed, and then how to make the aggression work. Like, clear MVP of the finals for me for Red Reserve.
Yeah, I can remember. Well, just again to stop feeding the idiocy. I love that. I thought, I'm going to say.
What can I say, man? He's playing well. That's just my job.
In season 2, wasn't it, of the Elite
exactly.
Series. And at that point, I was there like, oh, I'm expecting for this current season, Speed to get into RLRS. Not going to lie, I thought it was going to be on a team that would probably drop out, because that's naturally how you make your emergence onto the big scene. But Red Reserve, the Triple Trouble lads, saw him. Unfortunately, Andom had to. He was put down to the sub role and then wanted to go elsewhere naturally. But they clearly saw something that everyone else didn't, because we were all there like, why would you replace this 1 week before, you know, the fight, like before the RLRS play-ins and all of that, the qualifiers. And we've been proved all wrong. He's actually been a core part to that whole team, because the whole team are nuts, basically. Speed, don't get your head grown about 5 times too big now, buddy. But it's just basically that whole group mentality, and bringing in a newcomer that wants to just absolutely prove everyone wrong has been the biggest part to Red Reserve sort of like strive for success, which is cool.
And I'm actually really excited for what the future holds for Red Reserve as well. I think they're going to go really well in the promotion playoffs, especially with Fnatic falling down, and we'll talk about that in a second when we come to the Gfinity Elite Series. I'm actually really excited to see what Red Reserve can do in the future. Like they're a really, really good team. Like they are really fucking good. Right.
And let's talk about on that same point. I'm just going to say Red Reserve don't have to worry about the Gfinity Elite Series as well.
That
they
is
don't
true,
have to put in. Because one thing we definitely noticed, I think it was with Ignite on his pop-off season, I think it actually hurt him going into having to deal with being the star of the Gfinity Elite Series for Envy, as well as working with Remco and the lads. I think if they just put him on that main roster, don't let him like touch the Gfinity Elite Series so he doesn't have to worry about that. Envy could have done a lot better at LAN. And yeah, I'll stick to that because it is a lot of extra work, and that's it. It's extra work for these players.
And certainly that can end up hurting a lot of players, circa XL, as they managed to miss out on the forfeit and lose their first match in the Gfinity Elite Series still. So
this was a close
not
one,
the best, not the best of starts from XL. But quickly before we get into that one, I'm just going to run through the results real quick. Method 3-0 at XL, 2 matches that went to overtime. Reason got their first victory on the board by beating out the Envy squad. Epsilon took on Fnatic and they won 3-2 against the Fnatic squad. And Hashtag took on Asus. They won 3-0 again. Again, mostly high-scoring games coming in from that last series. But yeah, quickly about Method versus XL. What was it? You said it was a pretty close game. I didn't watch this one, so
overtime for the first 2 games, dude. And XL are looking up to. It's basically Method are the better team. No beating up around the bush of it, but XL are stepping it up. One thing I love is at the very start of the season, we thought XL were just going to be bombing. We're worried at this point. Probably after this season of Gfinity, they're going to be a squad that aren't going to be together. I don't think that anymore. They've refound, I wouldn't say form just yet, they're getting better, but they've refound energy. They want to get better at Rocket League. They want to finally get back up to, and again, RLCS is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but the top 4 of RLRS, which players of that caliber should be able to get there. You know, they're a team which are suddenly on the up again, and that's exciting to see. You know, them 4-0 in Smoothly, which was a team that was causing major upsets and basically being the RLRS team to put them back in their place, you know, and then unfortunately have to go on forfeits for the rest of the Grand Prix. But coming into this, Method's probably the roster I think is going to win out the whole of the Gfinity Elite Series. So for me, it's unfortunate they couldn't go to a Game 5, but 2 overtimes out of the 3 is pretty damn close when you look at it.
Yeah, certainly. You know, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that match. Certainly from the higher praises that you give it. Again, 2 overtimes, nothing to scoff at.
The third game is just don't watch that one. Though.
Skip the third game. Well, yeah, it's like watching an anime and just skip the ED. You watch the brunt of it and it's like, yeah, fuck off now.
Jay's a weeb for those that didn't know.
I am a weeb. I am a massive weeb. You haven't seen my room. I've got like Attack on Titan posters all over the place. Instant drop of 10 viewers. We're never gonna see them on AfterShock again. But I wanted to talk about recent gaming real quick. They had their first match against Envious, and on paper you would, like, just from the eye test, you would say Envious would be able to win that one. But this is an Envious roster beyond anything we've ever seen before. Like, this is a very, very dilapidated squad. It's a solid win for Reason. I have to question whether they're going to be able to replicate it again coming up against the stronger competition. But for Envy, this certainly feels like a team where it's like, They just want to get this last season over and done with so they can end this contract and be out of EU. Like, Envious have been moving all of their operations into North America. We speculated this when they dropped the WeDem girls roster when they didn't want to move into NA. And, you know, this is just credence to the point. They've hired 3 free agents, basically, to be part of their
Mount
team.
Waffle and I think Ocelot as well. Don't quote me on it. They were the lads from... And I was going to say were previous, you know, teams. They just basically kept over their academy team from last season. Now, their academy team was stronger last season. Well, not stronger, but in a better place last season, purely because this season, all the other teams have stepped it up to that next level, where these guys have been on different rosters. They've not been playing together. They're actually coming into this season of Gfinity probably looking one of the weakest squads, because of the change in the dynamic of the whole of EU. You know, you look at the Prosper squad getting picked up by Asus. They're actually pretty damn solid. XL, like I said, looking to up themselves. Fnatic are on the down, but they're still top tier players, so you can't count them out. Hashtag probably the only team to rival them for looking the weakest, but we saw from what Rescue Wales could do in the Grand Prix, which is the Hashtag squad, essentially Raffro and Jakipu. It was with Caro. I mean, Ixo showed that he could put on a performance as well, so that's good. This is going to be an interesting Elite Series because this is arguably the best competition between teams we've ever seen. It's not just been 1 or 2 teams ruling it and then the rest sort of being fillers for it. This is the best Elite Series season that you can see ever, I think.
Yeah, more than likely. I think on the overall scale of things, certainly. But for Envy as an individual element, like, it certainly feels like they're being very cynical about this. Yeah, I don't know. Like, again, it feels like they just want to get this season over and done with so they can just move all their operations out overseas. Like, I don't think they give a damn anymore. And again, that sucks for these guys because they are capable players. Like, you know, like, Mount and Waffle. Ocelot even, in fact, was around the community scene before the Renegade Cup was brought into fruition. I was seeing what he can do. They are players that I enjoy watching and I like, but unfortunately, just for Envious, I don't think they're really going to invest too much into this roster, unfortunately.
Yeah, the Envious roster there, all 3 of them, I would say, are RLCS sub-tier players. So they could probably make a run for RLRS, given they've got a right squad together, but they're just solid, reliable players which you can fall back onto. Envy has clearly taken that a bit too much to heart by putting 3 of them on a roster together, but I would have preferred Envy to pick up a full brand new roster, even if it's for 1 season, like pick up one of the RLRS squads. But here, I like at the same time that they've just carried over Mount and Waffle. They know those lads will put in the work, and they're sort of like seeing out the contract with them. You know, I like that in some way, and like Tylacto there in chat saying they brought in Ocelot instead of Ignite. Yeah, that's natural, and Ocelot's a good pickup for them.
Yeah, hopefully it works out well in the long term overall for the Envious core. Again, how they'll work up in after the Elite Series is something that's yet to be seen. But another team that I really want to focus on just before we head off, because we are running over time. So let's talk about Fnatic real quick, because they are continuing down their downward spiral here. They lost a 3-2 against Epsilon, and while the score lines and the fact that we saw 3 OTs in this series does lead credence to the idea that this series was good, gee, Fnatic just looked like they were struggling so much throughout the course of this one. Like, it did not seem like, because this is one of the matches I did watch, and for me, it didn't look confident. It really did not look confident from these boys. Like, it goes back, I think back to the days when they were known as the Leftovers and before they were picked up by Fnatic, and it's like, this team is a shell of its former self. Like, yeah, it's really looking dire for these guys.
I'm not going to be around the bush again. I reckon they're going to go down in the promotion playoffs just because of the caliber of Savage and Red Reserve. Fnatic, they just need a resurgence. Bringing in Mummy Snow didn't really fix it for them, unfortunately, replacing Siki. Something had to happen to that squad, and they decided Siki was the one which had to be replaced, which is really unfortunate. I don't really know. It's a game which was, like you said, closer. Well, you didn't say it, but closer on paper than when you actually watched it. Because, you know, a 3-2 performance is you would take that as being very close, especially with 3 overtimes in that one. But Epsilon just were in control, and Epsilon are a team that are very much on the up at the moment. Sebadan, Cheerio, and Bilbo. They've just gone over and done a LAN over in Belgium, I think it was, as well. But these lads are popping off and they're putting in the grind. So they're one to look out for next season of RLRS to come through. And just big props to Bilbo, essentially, for stepping up, and he's been the big turning point of that team.
Yeah, for Epsilon, things are looking good. And I'm hoping that I see good things from them as well, kind of similar sort of sentiments echoed from the likes of Team Envious. It's been a very long time for these guys as well, because obviously they have been names that have been notable among sort of like top tier Rocket League in a very long time, but I don't think Cheerio or Bilbo have been in the RLCS before, if history is serving me right.
Cheerio has, Bilbo hasn't. Cheerio was in season 1.
Yeah, he was in season 1. You're right. See, that's why I always get it fucked up, because it's like, oh,
and
season
Sebadan
1
was in season 2 under Summit.
Yeah, I know Sebadan was in season 2. It's season 1 that always messes me up, but
Bilbo's a new boy.
yeah, you know, like, those are guys that can do well at RLCS, and I feel like the Epsilon have a just they need a good run in the qualifiers to make it their way through. As right now, you know, right now as it stands, being in the Elite Series is a massive step up for these boys, because they are certainly of that caliber of elite level, and being in the Elite Series is going to give them that sort of like competition, because otherwise they'll be competing in the Renegade Cup, and it's like, oh well. You know, for the first like 3 or 4 stages, it's like, oh well, I'm gonna be shitting on everybody. You know, Epsilon. So you're gonna say something?
I was gonna say, it was literally throughout the qualifiers. Epsilon came out top of their qualifiers, and I think we casted over the finals. Jay, we were like, oh damn, this is a team that is going to be winning this, or can get through to the final bit. And then week 1, they bummed out 2 losses straight away, and we were like, what is going on here? It made no sense. Again, like I said, consistency is their problem, and Gfinity Elite Series is good for consistency for them anyway.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that they do find that sort of level of consistency in that LAN environment. Again, they're players that I really rate, and you know, I hold a little bit of stock in them. I'll start selling at the end of the Gfinity Elite Series if and when that happens. But yeah, things looking up for the Epsilon side, and at the cost of Fnatic, it's an unfortunate tale of things, but that's kind of the way the scene rolls, I think. And with that being said, we're done. We're finished baking. We've run over by 6 minutes, but it's fine.
Yeah, that's it. I think we just haven't gone over the hashtag versus ASUS one, which was a weird roster, like a weird game.
I mean, I don't rate ASUS as high as you do. Like, distance great, Tita's all right, but again, it's hashtag. Nah, no chance.
Hashtag with EXO is a great sub, and actually Doomsy was there on the day, so for him to actually go, no, EXO is going to be a better choice, is a good step, because I feel like that's something which players need to. I can very much see Ryan going into, say, a coaching role or more of a management of teams, because unfortunately the lad may not be in his prime anymore. It's a whole new generation of Rocket League, you know.
So it's not just the injury, Bacon, no? It's not just the injury. He's got
injury?
RSI. He's got RSI.
But he's always got a pass going in there. He's always getting involved in the Elite Series, and actually, like I said, props to him for knowing that on the day. EXO put in the work, and I want to see more of EXO, because he's the lad that needs to pop off. He's another potential, like I was saying with Bilbo, to come onto the scene and could start causing a lot of disruption in teams, especially because they've got to do what happened with Speed, which is saying kick off Andom, bring in this new kid, which everyone goes, why are you doing that? And it's because they're nuts players. You've got to get your start somewhere.
Gotta get your start somewhere. All right, well, I think that's going to be it for today's show. I talked about a lot today, and I know that a lot of people didn't really didn't catch every bit of the show. So once again, if you're watching live, the VODs will be up on YouTube very, very shortly. So make sure you follow us on the Twitter at RLAfterShock. If you'd like to get involved with even more of the community, then you can type !! Discord in the Twitch chat, and you can come to our Discord channel where we've got a nice open chat of friendly people that talk about Rocket League on the occasional side of things. We're setting up a news channel as well, so hopefully we can get some actual like posts going and try and see if we can increase a little bit more activity. And of course, if you're watching this or listening to this on the VOD or the audio version that's now available on Spotify, then all the information will be in the show description, the show notes, where you can follow the links to our Twitter and of course to our Discord. So we'll be back next week. Probably not doing the same thing, actually. I think next week we're going to be looking onto the RLCS LAN finals. So I think it's time we call in some backup on this one, Bacon. Next week,
I think we might have to do some sort of competition next week to mark the occasion. Maybe getting a couple of extra contestants. What do you say about that, Jay?
Yeah, I think we're going to need to get some guests in for next week. So this will be. I think next week is going to be a very, very fun one. So again, that's at 5 o'clock GMT next Monday at 5 o'clock GMT. I just said that twice. But make sure you tune in for that one. It's going to be a very, very fun time. I've been Switchblade Jay. Joining me has been Digital Bacon. Any final thoughts at the end of today's show?
Peanut butter sandwiches are the best sandwiches.
I think you've done that one before, actually. Are you sure?
Tasty. Yeah.
Are you
PB.
absolutely sure?
PB and J is horrible though. No one should ever mix those two together.
That's actually quite disgusting. All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to get off your screens. Again, we want to thank you for joining us. Special shout out to Shooty. Oh, my God. Special shout out to Fruity. Special shout out to Fruity and his boys for the massive host. I think this is the highest we've ever hit on AfterShock. So big shout outs to you, buddy. I want to thank you again for joining us. We'll see you back here for more of AfterShock.